Welcome to The Author's Corner. In anticipation of the release of my first book, I've created a series that gets up close and personal with some of my author friends so you can learn more about their upcoming releases. You'll get their voices, their opinions without filters. Want to hear more? Well, get cozy, grab some espresso or wine or the drink of your choice, and hold tight. We'll get started right after a word from our sponsor. Hello, world. It's your girl, Tash, again. We're still featuring up-and-coming authors for the new author segment. And today, I have another special guest, Angelique Clemens. Hi, Angelique. How are you?
Hello, I am well, thank you. How are you?
Good, good. Do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and what your book is about?
I don't mind at all. So, I am from the D, that is Detroit, Michigan, born and raised and very proud of my home. I wrote a novel called Can I Borrow Your Skin? And the subtitle is Learning to Be the Fierce Person You See in the Mirror. And my book and its companion pieces, because I wrote a guide to help people with some of the topics in the book and help break them down, and has a really good book club aid in this guide. And I also wrote a book of affirmations because my main character, a feisty woman named Nicolette, in the novel, she goes through the loss of her brother, and in dealing with that major loss, as she starts to move through her world, she realizes that the way that she relates to people and the way she relates to the world isn't true to who she is. She finds herself borrowing the idea of who people think she is as her own self. And so through my book, she actually goes through this process where she has to rediscover and relearn who she is. And she uses the mirror technique, that's very common in people trying to build self confidence and self esteem and really dealing with the self concept, that whole idea of self definition. It's the mirror technique where you literally sit in front of a mirror, you and your thoughts, you have a conversation with yourself. And the mirror technique has been so powerful in my own personal life that I felt that it was important to bring to my character. And I felt it was also important to produce a book of affirmations that people who are new to self discovery, self concept, and the mirror technique. And so it's over 50 affirmations that a person can literally sit and have a conversation with themselves in the mirror.
Wow, that's amazing. So, how did you learn about the mirror technique and how did it help you in your personal life?
So how I learned about it, I have a degree in psychology. It is something that I studied in school. Uh, I started applying it to my life, however, as a way to help myself get over some of my own personal difficult times. I think that it's very important for a person to not only know themselves, but to love themselves. And so I've used the mirror technique to help me get through some of my hard times. I, to this day, spend, a couple minutes in the mirror every day talking to myself. And when I have a difficult decision or something's really weighing on me, I increase my mirror time.
What inspired you to start writing your book?
That is a great question. So I started writing my book about 2 years ago. And at that point in my life, I was engaged to be married. I had just lost my father unexpectedly. And I was at a crossroads. And I had so much emotion. And I really felt like I could either push forward and be the self that I thought of me to be, or I could, figuratively give up. I could just stay in a defeated state. And in talking with my fiance at the time, he encouraged me to put some of my thoughts to paper. And I actually dedicate most of my books, if not partially, wholly to him because it was his encouragement that helped me realize that what I was dealing with and the stress of losing someone extremely important to me and not knowing what my next steps were and really struggling with who I was at that point in time in my life was something that a lot of people deal with. So I really sat down and I tried to figure out what were the most important things that I wanted to help other people's deal with. And the self concept just screamed at me. The whole idea that we as humans lose ourselves frequently, and in some cases, very, very easily. And the idea of who you are changes as you age, as you go through life, depending on who you're around. The average person's definition of who they are changes. I know that I'm not the same person sitting in church as I am sitting on my couch. I'm not the same person around my mother as I am around my friends. I'm not the same person around, my fraternity brothers from my professional fraternity who are as close to me as my sorority sisters are for my social sorority. So there's so many different versions of who I am. And because of that, it was so easy for me to kind of look at the bigger picture and say, I am very strong in my definition of self, but someone else who has to continually redefine themselves based on their situation, they may not be as strong in their idea of self. And to write a book that allows people to not only relate, but also get help in that self concept, I thought was very important. And it was really encouragement from my now husband that helped me get that down on paper.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that because it's just it's really difficult to maintain yourself when you're going through trauma because you're being pulled in different directions and you're exposed to different people, different situations. So I applaud you for putting pen to paper and helping other people in the same situation that may be going through the same struggle. Why do you think people hide behind their skins or roles? Can you describe the metaphor of skin in more detail?
Absolutely. Can I Borrow Your Skin? The title was inspired actually by my mentor Sean Blanchard. He and I were sitting down and discussing the book, and I said to him, I'm like, my book is about a young, black woman in the city of Detroit, similar to myself, struggling with loss and career and aspirations. And she is put in situations where she has to, you know, go up to people and put on this role. And it's like she's asking them, hey, can I borrow that skin right there and put on this description that you think that I am? And I'm going to play this skin and I'm going to be this person, kind of be an avatar for you um, for however long you need me to be that avatar. And when she leaves that situation, she's going to take that skin off and put it down and go into another situation where she's going to pick up that avatar, that skin that those people want her to wear. She's going to put it on. And so this woman is walking through life borrowing the skin or the avatar of those around her or their impression of her. And he goes, that's your title. And I go, you're right, it is. Because the average woman, and being a black woman in America, the average black woman cannot be fully herself around 90% of people in her life. Because as black women, and it's a topic I actually was discussing recently, black women are so trained to play a specific role. And I know this came up and it was all over Twitter and Facebook and all over other social media accounts during the vice presidential debate. and the way that Kamala Harris had to behave and act in order to be seen in a favorable light. Because women, black women in particular, are categorized. You're either the strong black woman, or the angry black woman, or you're ain't your mama, or you're the mammy. And it's like you're the sex symbol. Like we're typecast, and we're put into these roles, and not just in corporate America or Hollywood America, but in everyday life.
I had the same thought watching the debate, and some of the newscasters made some comments about, well, she'll have to prove herself to be likable tonight. So she needs to, be charming and funny. And I was like, nobody's telling Donald Trump to be charming and funny, or Joe Biden. Why are we talking about her charm? I was offended. But anyway, I
Exactly.
digress.
Because but you didn't, because that's all about that skin that she had to put on. And that's where, my book speaks to so many people, because at the end of the day, as a black woman in America, you're borrowing skin all day long in order just to get through.
That's deep. So now that we've identified what skin is and how people take it on and take it off, why is it important to reprogram yourself to stop this behavior if that's what you're doing?
Because you can't be true, you're not true to yourself. And that's where the self concept comes in. And this is probably the hardest thing for the average person, male, female, black, white, green, purple, it doesn't matter. If you ask the average person, who are you? They're going to say, oh, I'm a parent, or I'm a grandparent. I have this profession. I do this, I do that. You define yourselves by relationships, and that's your identity. Whereas I'm telling people you'll have a much more fulfilling life, and you'll be so much happier if you define yourself by parameters that you yourself set. I if I had to pick the traditional roles, I've already mentioned that I'm a wife. Obviously I'm a daughter, but I tell people all the time I'm a full-time wife, daughter, sister, aunt. I'm also a scientist. I'm a writer. I'm an author in a couple different genres. But at the end of the day, you know, I'm this woman who loves the garden and loves puzzles and adores scotch and likes puppies.
I love it.
Like at the end of the day, I don't define myself by my relationship with my husband, love him dearly, but I tell him all the time, and he makes jokes like, but I love me more. I tell him he'll ask me, well, what's your schedule? What are you doing? Because he knows I take myself on dates. I do things that I like to do for me. And our relationship is a bonus because I love me first.
Wow. I love that. That's amazing.
But it's necessary, because as much as he loves me and does things for me, and I love him back and do things for him, we don't have the kind of relationship where he has to make me happy. I'm happy, and we get to do things together as two happy people. And that's where I tell people this whole idea of self is very, very important, because if I'm defining myself as a wife, well, if the relationship ended, then do I end?
Right. Wow.
And so if I define myself as Angelique, and Angelique has these things that makes her happy, that she adores and she does, and she's able to be outside of this relationship, I'm a happy person coming into a relationship. If God forbid something happened, I'm gonna be a happy person going out of that relationship too.
I keep leaning towards, do you think this is generational? Because I feel like women in particular, in generations before, we were definitely taught, if not, us ourselves, our mothers, our grandmothers taught, oh, you have to be like this, you have to be like that, you got to wear a dress, you got to be pretty, your hair has to look a certain way. Do you think this has been taught generationally in the home?
Yes and no. It's actually funny. I had a conversation with my mother over the weekend, and she was recalling a conversation that she was having with one of her neighbors. And my mother is in her 60s, and her neighbor is younger, in her 20s or 30s. And her neighbor made the comment that she wants to learn to do crocheting and knitting and things like that. My mother, she crochets, she knits, she quilts, she sews, she does the gambit. And the young lady had made the comment to my mother that she never learned how to quilt and knit. And it's sad because all of her aunts are master quilters who won awards and contests, and she never learned because her mother never learned. My mother made the comment, um, because the girl made the comment that her mother was a feminist. And my mother said, yeah, that's sad. She forgot the fact that the femme and feminist meant female. And that women in her generation, when the feminist movement was going on, were so busy trying to redefine their roles that they also forgot that there's power in the roles that they had. And, my grandparents' generation, they use the power in the role that they had, whether it was being at home and being the foundation for the family, or if they were both at home and was able to work a job or needed to work a job, let's be honest, but they still use the power in the relationship that they had being the foundation for the household. And so I think that this current generation, the millennials, the women who are 20, 30, 40 years old right now, they are struggling with that dichotomy that became possible with our parents' generations, where they could be both the feminist and they could be the strong minded breadwinner type woman, the woman with a career, because you can have it all.
Yes, I believe
And I
that.
think, I say all the time, I think I am that woman who has it all. I'm a professional woman with a professional career who does all right for herself, but I still cook, I still clean, I sew, I knit, I have a garden. So I can be at the table in corporate America, and then I can also come home and be my husband's wife. I could do both those things because I know who I am, and I've defined my role in my life as someone without those limits put on to them.
I struggle with the same thing. So I have a professional career, but I'm also struggling with, but I really, really want to write though. Does that go together? And I'm not writing scientific journals that are professional. I'm writing fiction.
Right.
And it's almost like
Right.
when I'm at work, do I tell them this is what I do or do I hold it in? Like, I'm sure if they Google me, they'll
And
figure it
that's
out.
that's hard. Right. It's like I tell people all the time, you want to know me, I'm Googleable. www.me. It's okay.
Yeah, it's fine. Okay, so
Right?
yeah,
But it's a struggle because you are struggling with the idea that, on one hand, you're factual, you're scientific, you're facts and stats and point A to point B, and then you, on the other hand, it's fiction and it's fantasy, it can fairy tale, and sometimes it feels like those two worlds collide and they don't mesh well. But that is someone else's definition. Your definition of yourself is that you can have both column A and column B, and that's a good thing. Mix them together and make your idea of who you are.
yes, column C, love it. Um, so what are some signs you may need to find yourself, in your opinion?
So, in my opinion, if you find yourself in conversations and situations and you're always deferring, if you as a person aren't strong enough in your own convictions where you feel like everyone has a good point and, oh yeah, you're right, oh well, you also have a point, chances are you haven't defined who you are in that situation. Not necessarily agreeable, because it's okay if you agree with people, but if you're deferring, if person A says something and you're like, yeah, you're right, person A, I agree, But then person B comes along and person B has a complete opposite opinion of person A and you agree with person B as well. You can't agree with both of them. Chances are you don't have your own opinion
Oh, right.
and you're borrowing someone else's opinion and their definition of what's right or what's correct or what's factual, and you're putting that on as your skin. Because there's some people who are just going to say they agree with people just so they're not confrontational. That's different than not being who you are.
Great, great, great. How has being an author impacted you personally?
you know I'm still me. At the end of the day, besides having a giant table with my picture on it that I use for book signings, not a whole lot has changed for me. It's been fun doing different interviews and being invited to speak in places, being able to get my thoughts out. That's been fun. I think that change wise, there has not been, a lot of changes.
I'm a reader. I've been through loss and trauma. I realize I haven't found myself. What are some words of encouragement you have for me?
The biggest thing that I have for people who have not found themselves, and it's something I tell, I sometimes have to remind myself each day is a new day for you to take that step towards who you want to be. Every day is not going to be perfect. Every day you're not going to be able to see the huge progress that you made. But people need to realize that at the end of the day, when you're looking yourself in the mirror, you may not feel the distance that you travel, but you have to understand that the earth moves about 60,000 miles a day, and you don't feel
Mm.
that either. So every little step you make is a huge, huge impact.
So, talk to me more about the supplemental material that goes with your book, the guide and the affirmations.
Absolutely. So the guide is a small, it's compared to the novel, it's small. But it's in my book, my main character actually has an alternative lifestyle. And so part of the guide is just explaining the different versions of the alternative lifestyle that she's in, and just kind of giving people straight facts and statistics about that, because it can be daunting. You don't need the guide to understand the book or to get the relationships, but if you want to dive more into the nuances of that genre, it could be helpful. The second part of the guide steps people through the psychology of the mirror technique. And it actually gives people a place to journal if they want to start using the mirror technique to make improvements and impact on their own lives. It uses a common example about weight loss, because in America, there are a lot of obese people. Me, myself, I am not thin.
Neither am I.
I have been on, well, it's just being honest. I have been on a healthy journey for about 10, 15 years, and I'm not at the end of that journey. And so it talks about the whole weight loss process. And in the book, it actually discusses the main character, Nicolette. She is on a journey to be healthier as well. And it's not actually focusing on weight loss, but that's the example I use in the guide. And it teaches people how to make goals that are actually achievable and realistic, and how to critically look at your life without being unrealistic and harsh on yourself. Because, and I use the example of height when I talk about that. You know, I'm 5'4". I am not a tall person. I've never been tall in my entire life. I was either average or short, depending on depending on the situation. And so I make the comment that if you look at yourself in the mirror and you wish you were taller, that's great, but that's not something you can change. There's no such thing as, putting yourself on the rack and stretching yourself like they thought you could do during the Spanish Inquisition. Your height is your height. So if you want to make a goal, then you can say to yourself, I wish I could appear taller. And so you will start sitting up straight more. As a woman, you can wear heels. As a man, you can wear lifts, which is pretty much heels. And so it talks about things that you do. It talks about things that you can do and you can affect. But at the end of the day, I'm always going to be 5'4". No amount of heels or sitting up straight is going to make me taller than 5'4". But I can carry myself in a way that I appear, taller than I am. And so it talks about that process. And the last part of the guide is literally, it's a book club aid. And so it's about 10 or 15 different discussion questions that people can use to dive deeper into the book, things that people may not pick up on, and not to give away too much from the book or the guide. One of the topics is about how the main character feels in her family life. Every single family, whether you're the only child or not, kids and cousins discuss among themselves who's the favorite. And there's a discussion about that in the book. And I dive into that deeply, and I talk about just the demographics in the United States when it comes to how people deem themselves to be the favorite or not.
Interesting.
So my third book, the second companion, is just a book of affirmations. It talks about the mirror technique. It goes into some different breathing patterns that you can use, and then it's over 50 different affirmations that people can use, whether they're doing morning affirmations, evening affirmations, or if they're similar to the main character in the book, where they're actually doing affirmations to help them with their concept of self, because they're different affirmations that you
Now,
can use.
for the affirmations, you talked about the mirror technique. Is it strictly to be recited in the mirror? Can you do it in the car? What's your recommendation?
Honestly, you can do it in the mirror, you can do it in the car. And Can I Borrow Your Skin? Nicolette, she does affirmations in the mirror. She does them in the car. She talks to her, she does it in the gym. It's what you're most comfortable with. Me personally, I do affirmations in my mirror. I tend to do them in the morning. Sometimes I do them at night, but I absolutely do affirmations in my car. If I'm stuck in traffic, or if I'm on a longer drive than my normal 15-20 minute commute, then I definitely do affirmations. If I have something big coming up, I do a series of affirmations for that. I highly recommend it. It's just a good way to connect with yourself. And it's very motivating.
Great. That's very helpful. So if people want to get in contact with you, how can they do that? Are you on social media?
I am on social media, and the easiest way to get in contact with me, as well as get my social media links, is to go to my website. It's angeliqueclemens.com, AngeliqueClemens.com. My webpage has a bundle package for all three of my books. It also has links to Amazon, Kindle, Nook, and Barnes and Noble.
Well, thank you, Angelique. I've definitely enjoyed our time together. You guys heard it. Angelique Clemens, Can I Borrow Your Skin? Go out and support. Thank you. Do you like what you're hearing? Would you like to support this podcast? You can make a monetary donation to the podcast on the podcast page on either Anchor or Spotify. You can also follow me at Natty Gal Productions on Instagram. That's NattyGyal Productions with an S. You can also follow me on Facebook under the same handle. Once again, thanks for listening. Natty Gal Productions.